Right then. So in my preparation for this presentation today, I did a good bit of reading, and there is quite a lot of reference to nature as a resource for coping with tragedy, with sorrow, with difficult times, in literature, in philosophy, in popular culture. And one quote that I came across that kind of, I think, sort of describes the comfort and the strength that people can take from nature is sort of described in this quote by Anne Frank. Those of you who might not know Anne Frank, she was a German-born Jewish girl whose family went into hiding to evade Nazi persecution during the German occupation of the Netherlands. Her family lived in a secret annex from 1942 to 44, during which time Anne documented her experiences in a diary, which was then later published after she had died in 1945 in the concentration camps. So the quote says, "The best remedy for those who are afraid, lonely, or unhappy is to go outside, somewhere where they can be quiet, alone with the heavens, nature, and God, because only then does one feel that all is as it should be, and that God wishes to see people happy amidst the simple beauty of nature. As long as this exists, and it certainly always will, I know that then there will always be comfort for every sorrow, whatever the circumstances may be. And I firmly believe that nature brings solace in all troubles." So what I thought when I read this quote was that it's a really powerful reminder of how universal the comfort that one can find in nature is, and that it is a source of strength for a lot of people during difficult times, of which grief certainly is one example. So, as mentioned, there is a lot of reference to how much of a resource nature can be in grief, in literature, philosophy, popular culture, but also actually there is some scientific evidence that nature is beneficial to human health. In fact, research proposes that nature has a nurturing effect on human physical, emotional, and psychological well-being through innate, so inbuilt mechanisms in our bodies. So, for example, research shows that by being in nature, blood pressure gets regulated, immune systems get improved, stress levels drop, mood can be lifted. And interestingly, those benefits of nature on human health get observed in all sorts of different natural environments. So green spaces like parks and woodlands, forests, hills, mountains, as well as blue spaces. So in coastal areas, by lakes, by rivers. Benefits are seen whether somebody is physically active, so we're walking, running, cycling, swimming, but equally in being inactive, so just resting, sitting, lying down. And even when nature is only taken in through one sense, by, for example, looking at nature images, hearing nature sounds, smelling nature scents, or engaging with organic materials like untreated wood, even then we can see physiological benefits from engaging with nature. There are different theories that exist as to why nature is beneficial to human health. One of them is that through evolution, we are perfectly adapted to nature. So across human history, we have spent 99.9% of our time in natural environments. And really, the urban environments that most of us live in these days are actually relatively new in human history. And because we're not as well adapted to our urban environments, they often cause us stress. So the theory is that being in nature is more natural to us, to our bodies, and thus helps us to relax. That's one theory. Another one is that nature hones the realistic perception of our own power, so what we can and can't control. So if you think about walking in nature, you become aware of those laws of nature, that the sun rises and sets, that the seasons change, that a plant will grow and eventually die. And I suppose that we as humans are only one part of a greater whole that is nature. But equally, though, when you are in nature, when you're walking, sitting, observing, listening, or swimming, you can also get a sense of the things that you can control, the things that you have power over. So you can take another step, you can take another breath, you can keep listening, observing the sounds, the smells of nature around you. You can swim another stroke. So I suppose being in nature shows you where your limits are, but also it can bring you back into your body and bring you back into the present moment and the things that you can control, which I suppose in grief is often a helpful thing, because in grief really you become aware of how there are things out of your control. Somebody getting sick, somebody passing away, these things were not within your control most of the time. And finding yourself in those situations, there is only some of it that you can control. But equally, finding things where you can come to rest, where you can relax, where you can calm, where you can feel control within your body is helpful, certainly. From research, we also know, though, that what is really important is whatever nature experience you might want to try or use to cope with your grief, that actually aligns with what your individual preference for a nature experience is. So the research says clearly that if that you will have most benefits from being in nature if the nature that you're in is something that you enjoy doing, something that you can connect with, something that resonates with you, something that is meaningful, so that you have an individual preference for it. So somebody who loves the sea is better off going down to a beach and sitting there observing the waves than climbing a mountain that doesn't have the same meaning, that doesn't provide the same kind of soothing comfort. With that in mind, I thought for the remaining part of the presentation, I was going to talk about 4 different nature activities and nature experiences. And I suppose while listening to those, I would encourage you to kind of check in with yourself if any of those resonate with you, if any of those seem appealing to you, because chances are, if they are appealing to you, if they resonate with you, then those are the ones that will likely be most beneficial to you. So the first nature activity or experience are nature walks and hikes. And in fact, there is many examples in literature, in film, describing walking and hiking in nature as a transformative experience in the context of grief, loss, and personal crisis. And 2, from research, we know that there are positive effects of nature-based walking interventions. And really, we are in Ireland very fortunate that there is lots and lots of walks and hikes in Ireland that you can do. There's parks you can go to mountains that you can climb depending on your own physical abilities. I think always with going into nature, it's important to be prepared, to be mindful, to mind your own ability to stay safe. And here I thought I would give you some resources. So if nature walks and hikes are appealing to you, then here are some resources that you could link in with maybe and see if there is something useful for you to be gained from any of these. For those of you that may have been bereaved through the Galway Hospice, the Galway Hospice offers a guided park walk twice a month for those that were bereaved through their services. They call it Walk and Talk. It's a walk in a forest here in Galway, and it fits nicely with the topic today. So that's why I thought I would signpost it. So for anybody that this might be relevant to, there is the link here that you can access more information about this initiative about. Also, there is lots and lots of websites out there that kind of detail different walks and advise walkers on how to stay safe in nature. So I've included a link for that for the Ireland Walking Guide here. There is lots and lots of books that touch on the topic, but I've included well, more than three actually, because the Salt Path trilogy, that's 3 different books. But I've included those here. The second one in particular, that is, it's a man who started doing a long distance hike after his wife passed away from cancer. So for those of you who like reading, there might be something in those books that could be helpful. So then the second nature activity or experience I'd like to tell you a little bit about is called Shinrin-yoku, which literally translated means forest bathing. Forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku, is the Japanese practice of slow, mindful walking through a forest, taking in nature with all senses. It's walking without the aim of exercise or trying to get anywhere. Its purpose really is to calm overstimulation caused by urban environments. And I might add also, often grief can feel overwhelming, which is why I thought this forest bathing might be a nice thing to try in the context of grief too, to calm that overwhelming sensation that can go with grief and to promote relaxation. Shinrin-yoku can be practiced individually or in a group. There is guided walks offered in various locations in Ireland. And there is also some apps and handouts that can help you sort of learn about Shinrin-yoku and plan your first own forest bathing experience. So there's been lots of books written about Shinrin-yoku. The one I have here on the slide, Walking in the Woods, Go Back to Nature, the Japanese Way of Shinrin-yoku, I listened to as an audiobook. It's available on Audible, and it's quite accessible. It's not very long, and it's good sort of introduction to the science and practice of Shinrin-yoku, if you happen to be interested in that. Also, Forestry England offers a beginner's guide to forest bathing on their website. I've included the link here. And Forest Bathing Wicklow, they have a nice little app that you can download via their website, which has sort of invitations for different exercises you can do in nature. So that's forest bathing. The next one then that might be appealing to you is gardening. Systematic review of 22 studies shows the benefits of gardening related activities on various different health outcomes. And in the context of grief, gardening is often described as a space for existential reflection. And people would say the multi-sensory nature of gardening, because you're working with your hands, you're feeling, you're smelling, you're seeing, you're out in nature, oftentimes you hear different sounds of nature, birds and so on. That is often perceived as helpful in grief. And I suppose gardening can be done indoors in pots, can be done on a balcony, can be done in a garden if you're fortunate to have one. But equally, then there is a lot of community gardens out there, which bring together the benefits of gardening with also maybe getting out and meeting others, with feelings of isolation being also quite common in grief. That can be a helpful way of getting out, having something to do, but yet also meeting others. So here is the link to Community Gardens Ireland. They have a whole list of where all these community gardens are across the country that you can look up. And if you're gardening on your own, I suppose my advice would be keep it simple, and be mindful of your own capacities. So allow yourself breaks if it feels like too much. Exhaustion is very prevalent in grief also. So not to be overworking or overdoing things, but to focus on the process of gardening rather than the end result, to be patient with yourself. And then the last nature activity I wanted to talk to you about is open water swimming. So scoping review 14 studies suggest that swimming in nature is likely to have positive effects on mental health and well-being. And people often say that there is a sense of personal achievement in going out and swimming in nature. It can become routine, which is helpful. And there is often a sense of community too. If you swim in the same place every day, you become part of a community, I suppose. And then crucially, it can be a place of refuge, which is often much needed in grief, to get a break from it, to get away, to switch off for a little while. And certainly being in ice cold water, as the sea most of the time is in Ireland, can be that place of refuge. So word of caution, if you are planning on going off open water swimming, to consult reputable sources in preparing for that swim, to be mindful of your own abilities and to be safe if you're going out there. Swim Ireland offers practical advice around open water swimming. I've included their website here. And then there is a book that I can recommend. This Is My Sea by Miriam Guy. She's an Irish author, and she writes about her experience with grief and how sea swimming was a resource to her in her grief.